What is up, guys? Welcome back to Early Access Gamer. We're diving into the massive, sprawling landscapes that define the modern era. From physics-defying adventures to living, breathing frontiers that will consume your entire calendar, we've curated 20 essential worlds you need to conquer before 2027. Buckle up, because these games aren't just distractions, they're legacies. Let's get right into it. Kicking off our list at number 20 is Elden Ring. When this dropped way back on February 25th, 2022, it had its fair share of frustrating frame rate drops and stutters. Fast forward to 2026, and those performance hiccups have been completely ironed out across all platforms, leaving behind an absolute masterpiece. If a studio actually respects my intelligence enough to let me get hopelessly lost, they have my undivided attention. The cryptic, unguided NPC questlines might drive some players crazy, but that ruthless dedication to mystery is exactly why uncovering secrets in the lands between feels so incredibly rewarding. Even better, the Shadow of the Erd Tree expansion introduced the Scatter-Tree Blessing mechanic. This brilliant area-specific progression system completely solved the power creep problem. Instead of max-level characters steamrolling the new content, you face a meaningful, brutal challenge right out of the gate. While the Elden Beast final boss remains quite divisive, the sheer scale of this world makes it a mandatory obsession. Coming in at number 19 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I usually get completely overwhelmed when a title just dumps me in a massive field with zero map markers, but getting relentlessly distracted here is the actual core gameplay loop. Releasing way back on March 3rd, 2017, this one threw out the traditional rulebook to completely trust your own curiosity. The secret sauce keeping this game relevant all these years later is the brilliant chemistry engine working behind the scenes. It interacts flawlessly with the physics system, meaning elements like fire, water, and wind react to materials logically. You can chuck a metal broadsword at an enemy during a thunderstorm to conduct a lethal lightning strike, use a campfire to create a massive updraft for your paraglider, or splash water to extinguish spreading flames. It defined the go anywhere, do anything philosophy, giving you absolute freedom to experiment with the world itself. Coming in at number 18 is The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. I absolutely love it when developers hand over tools that intentionally let you break their own game. Dropping back on May 12th, 2023, this sequel gave us the Ultra Hand ability, and it is a masterclass in player freedom. You can fuse practically any object in the environment to build complex vehicles, sketchy bridges, and completely automated combat traps. It essentially turns the physics engine into your personal sandbox, giving you near infinite freedom to solve puzzles and traverse the map in ways the developers probably never even intended. It is totally fair to acknowledge the valid community critique about the reused overworld. Exploring the exact same Hyrule triggered a been there, done that feeling for folks who poured hundreds of hours into the last game. However, the unparalleled verticality and the sheer absurdity of your custom creations turn every inch of this map into a massive playground for wild experimentation. Landing at number 17 is Red Dead Redemption 2. When developers spend years agonizing over microscopic physics systems that most players will never even notice, I absolutely eat that up. Rockstar gave us this meticulously crafted frontier back on October 26, 2018 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, followed by PC on November 5th, 2019. The granular details are genuinely absurd. You can shoot an oil wagon, watch it leak a trail on the dirt, and toss a Molotov to spark a dynamic moving fire path. Even your ammunition features realistic physics, meaning high-velocity rounds punch right through and hit multiple targets in a single shot. It is a slow burn masterpiece you can easily lose hundreds of hours in. The only tragic part of this cowboy fantasy is that console players are still locked in 30 frames per second jail. The community constantly begs for a native 60 frames per second patch for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles, but we still suffer. Dropping in at number 16 is a title that completely rewired my expectations for how a digital content should feel. Number 16 is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Usually side quests in massive RPGs feel like tedious grocery runs, but this game turned every random detour into a gripping, tragic mini epic. It has been over a decade since it launched back on May 19, 2015, yet it still holds the undisputed crown as the ultimate benchmark for narrative-driven open worlds. What really hooks me during every single playthrough is the Witcher senses mechanic. You are not just blindly swinging a silver sword at random beasts, you are actually playing detective, sniffing out hidden clues, reconstructing gruesome past events, and tracking your prey makes you feel like a true weathered professional working a deadly trade. Every muddy swamp and bustling city is packed with rich lore and choices that truly carry weight. It is universally hailed as a masterpiece for a very good reason, guaranteed to devour hundreds of hours. Crashing into number 15 is Cyberpunk 2077. Everyone loves a good comeback story, but delivering the ultimate tech flex on top of a redemption arc is just showing off. After that infamous December 2020 launch, the massive 2.0 update and Phantom Liberty expansion in September 2023 completely resurrected Night City. They utterly shed that rocky reputation, leaving behind a highly polished masterpiece. If a studio wants to give me full vehicle combat, complete with weaponized cars firing missile launchers and machine guns during high-speed chases, I am absolutely going to lose hundreds of hours causing pure chaos. It feels like an entirely different beast now, and if you have the rig for it, this remains the undisputed industry standard for pushing PC hardware. Firing this up on an RTX 4090 with full path tracing and NVIDIA DLSS 3.5, working its frame generation and ray reconstruction magic is a visual experience you simply cannot replicate anywhere else. Moving down to number 14, we have Grand Theft Auto 5. You would think a sandbox originally dropped back in September 2013 would feel like a dusty museum piece by now, but Rockstar completely refused to let Los Santos age out of relevance. The real genius here is still that multi-protagonist system. Instantly bouncing between Michael, Franklin, and Trevor does not just give you 3 distinct chaotic perspectives, it completely eliminates travel boredom and keeps the pacing relentlessly high. The March 2022 current-gen update for PS5 and Xbox Series X turned this classic into a modern technical marvel, totally fixing old input lag complaints. You get 3 visual modes, but Performance RT is the absolute sweet spot. It delivers 1440p resolution at a rock-solid 60 frames per second, while keeping those gorgeous ray trace shadows. Both consoles run it beautifully, though the PS5 holds a slightly more stable frame rate when the explosions start chaining together. It remains an unapologetic, high-octane playground that still commands your attention in 2026. Crashing into the number 13 spot is Horizon Forbidden West. I am an absolute sucker for titles making map traversal feel like a blockbuster action sequence. Launched back on February 18th, 2022 for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, this gorgeous blend of lush post-apocalyptic nature and high-tech machine combat remains a staggering triumph. The traversal mechanics are where this adventure truly sinks its teeth into you. Deploying the shield wing to glide into a dust tornado for a massive altitude boost, then plummeting down to seamlessly land directly onto the back of your galloping mount is pure gaming bliss. Add in the immense scale of climbing a towering tall neck or diving deep into sunken ruins, and the thrill of discovery is brilliant. For the ultimate eye candy, Digital Foundry praises the PlayStation 5 resolution mode. It targets native 4K at 30 frames per second with incredibly rich geometric density, though the checkerboarded 1800p 60 frames per second performance mode keeps those robot dinosaur fights perfectly smooth. Coming in at number 12 is Ghost of Tsushima. We all know the standard open world formula can get repetitive, and some critics have called these side quest loops a bit familiar. But when an environment looks this jaw-dropping, I will happily clear enemy camps all day long. Instead of plastering your screen with intrusive UI markers, you are guided purely by the wind blowing through the grass. It turns exploration into a living painting, making every discovery feel organic and earned. The combat is just as masterfully crafted. Nailing the standoff mechanic is pure cinematic perfection. You lock eyes with an enemy, hold your nerve, and time your strike at the exact right millisecond to land a fatal hit. It perfectly captures that classic samurai tension, rewarding patience over mindless button mashing. Since arriving on PC back in May of 2024, developer Nixie's ensured it sings on modern hardware. You get stunning 4K resolution at 60 frames per second with DLSS support, and it even runs beautifully on the Steam Deck. Crashing into number 11 is the ultimate forever game, The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. It originally dropped way back on November 11, 2011, and yet here we are in 2026, still getting completely lost in its frozen mountains. You can boot this up vowing to play a heavy armor warrior or a pure mage, but give it 10 hours and you will inevitably morph into a stealth archer. That iconic pull towards sniping enemies from the shadows perfectly sums up why this world is so engrossing. It lets you naturally define your playstyle through experimentation instead of trapping you in rigid classes. Modern reviews love to point out that the melee combat feels undeniably floaty by modern standards, and the lack of area looting can be a drag. But none of that stops this fantasy behemoth. The sheer volume of hidden dungeons, sprawling factions, and emergent stories outshines the dated mechanics. Furthermore, a massive community-driven modding scene continues to completely modernize the experience, guaranteeing it stays permanently installed on your drive. Cracking the top 10, we step back into the irradiated wasteland of Fallout 4. Most people play role-playing games to save the world, but my brain is entirely hijacked by a psychotic need to hoard desk fans and coffee mugs. The junk scavenging loop here is absolute perfection. Almost every piece of random debris you trip over can be broken down into raw materials to customize weapons, upgrade armor, or construct incredibly elaborate settlements. The original game launched way back in 2015, and the next-gen update that dropped in April 2024 caught serious community backlash. It broke compatibility with a ton of PC mods and failed to fix the persistent engine-level hitching on consoles when drawing complex geometry. If you are diving in now, the absolute best way to experience it is using the 40 frames per second mode on a 120 Hz display. It gives a massive boost in motion fluidity over 30 frames without the nasty stuttering you get trying to push 60. Down at number 9, we have No Man's Sky. We all love a good underdog story, but calling this title a mere comeback is the understatement of the decade. Originally launching way back on August 9th, 2016, Hello Games could have easily walked away. Instead, they delivered the industry's greatest redemption arc, transforming a rocky start into the ultimate procedural sandbox. The sheer scale of this universe makes it the absolute definition of a forever game. They are still dropping massive content bombs to this day. The recent Remnant update gave us the Gravitino core attachment for our multi-tools, letting you literally manipulate gravity to grab and launch objects across the terrain. Add in colossal updates like Worlds Part 1 and Aquarius, which brought solar starship crafting, deep sea fishing, and completely overhauled planetary biomes. The sense of discovery here is genuinely infinite. If a developer is willing to spend nearly 10 years pouring this much love into charting the stars, I am more than happy to keep exploring them. Give me a fantasy world that actively wants to ruin my day with systemic chaos, and I am strapped in for the long haul. Hitting number 8 on our countdown is Dragon's Dogma 2. When it launched back in March 2024, it definitely caught some well-deserved heat. Players were rightfully frustrated by severe frame rate drops in densely populated cities, and the bizarre inclusion of day one microtransactions for items you could already earn naturally in-game. But push past that initial friction, and you find an RPG where the journey is wildly more important than the destination. The absolute masterstroke is the pawn system. You get to hire AI companions created by real people, and these pawns actually share knowledge of quests and world secrets they learned while adventuring in their creators' games. It injects a completely unique, emergent sense of community into a hardcore single-player experience. The sheer unpredictability of wandering this massive, dangerous map makes it a high fantasy adventure you simply cannot skip. Coming in at number 7 is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It has been nearly 6 years since this Viking saga dropped on November 10th, 2020, and it remains the ultimate video game buffet. I usually complain when developers cram a map full of icons, but there is a strange hypnotic satisfaction to methodically clearing settlements across 9th century England and Norway. The world looks stunning on the PS5 and Xbox Series X, pushing a crisp 4K resolution at 60 frames per second. When the endless axe swinging gets exhausting, you can easily lose hours to Orlog. This dedicated dice-based minigame is incredibly addictive and offers a perfect strategic break from your exploration. You do need to pace yourself. The biggest community critique is the extreme bloat. The main campaign is notoriously long and repetitive, turning what should be fun side content into a slog that causes major burnout well before the end. Treat it as a game to chip away at slowly, and it delivers. Coming in at number 6 is a title that completely threw out the traditional open world playbook. Gamers absolutely love to slap the walking simulator label on anything with slow, methodical pacing, but treating that as an insult completely misses the absolute brilliance of Death Stranding. Originally dropping way back on November 8th, 2019 for the PlayStation 4, this game makes the terrain itself your primary antagonist. It turns the simple act of traversal into a deeply rewarding meditative puzzle. It is famously divisive and proudly a love it or hate it experience, but the strand system is where the magic happens. This asynchronous multiplayer mechanic lets you leave physical structures like bridges, ladders, or ziplines in your world that seamlessly appear for other players. You are physically helping complete strangers navigate this hauntingly beautiful, brutal landscape without ever directly interacting with them. It creates a profound sense of shared purpose and community that makes every grueling step across this massive map feel incredibly impactful. Taking the number 5 spot is Kingdom Come Deliverance. Back when it dropped in February 2018, it was infamously buggy, but the developers stuck with it, and it has long since evolved into a rock-solid, must-play cult classic. I generally lean toward power fantasies where you can obliterate a dozen enemies with a single button press, but the sheer unforgiving realism here completely rewired my brain. They ditched traditional arcade combat for a physics-based, 5-point directional interface. You are actively forced to manage your attack angles, parrying, feinting, and stabbing with absolute precision. Every single sword fight feels less like a casual mob encounter and more like a terrifying technical duel where one mistake leaves you bleeding out in the mud. It refuses to hold your hand, and that lack of compromise makes every hard-won victory feel completely euphoric in a massive world that will easily swallow hundreds of hours of your time. Crashing into the number 4 spot is Fallout New Vegas. I will gladly tolerate a mountain of jank if an RPG actually respects my intelligence, and this title remains the absolute gold standard for player agency. Released way back in October 2010, the Mojave Wasteland might lack the geographical footprint of modern Titans, but the sheer density of meaningful choices makes it feel remarkably alive. The community will quickly warn you about the notorious technical instability. You are going to encounter frequent crashes, bugs, and gunplay that feels incredibly stiff by today's standards, often forcing you to rely heavily on the VATS system just to get by. But the real magic happens when you toggle on hardcore mode. This drastically alters the loop, transforming a standard shooter into a grueling tactical survival experience. You have to constantly manage hunger, thirst, and sleep. Ammo has physical weight, and healing items restore health slowly over time instead of instantly, making careful preparation just as vital as combat skill. Coming in at number 3 is Monster Hunter World. I have played countless titles that brag about featuring a living, breathing environment, but almost none actually deliver the way this masterpiece from 2018 does. The sheer scale and interconnected design of these vertical biomes make you feel like a tiny speck in a massive food chain. You are not just fighting static bosses in an arena. These beasts have daily routines, territories, and active migration patterns. The absolute peak of this design happens when 2 colossal monsters cross paths and trigger a dynamic, unscripted turf war. Watching these titans beat the stuffing out of each other while you exploit the chaos for a tactical advantage is a thrill that never gets old. If you are finally taking the plunge as a new player, do yourself a massive favor. Avoid using the defender weapons and guardian armor sets during your first run. They are overpowered items meant to rush you to the endgame and will completely wreck the satisfying learning curve. Taking the number 2 spot is Starfield. Sometimes a studio actually takes community backlash and uses it to forge an incredible comeback. When Bethesda launched this massive space RPG back in September 2023 for Xbox and PC, it took heavy fire for relentless loading screens and empty exploration. Fast forward to last month, April 2026. Not only did it finally hit PlayStation 5, but the developers dropped the Free Lanes update alongside the Terran Armada DLC. They completely flipped the script by adding cruise mode. You can finally engage in free flight through open space between planets without a single loading screen interrupting your journey. It transforms that deep shipbuilding system into a canvas for genuine interstellar discovery. The performance also got a massive overhaul. On Xbox Series X, that old locked 30 FPS limitation is dead. With VRR enabled at 120Hz, you easily push 60 frames per second and above in less dense areas. Bethesda actually listened, making this the perfect time to claim your path among the stars. Taking the absolute number 1 spot on our list is Crimson Desert. I completely wrote off this title when it launched on March 19, 2026 due to massive community backlash. Seeing a developer pull off a comeback of this magnitude is exactly why I love this industry. The game was initially dragged for clunky controls, a bland story, and unintuitive puzzles. But Pearl Abyss put in the work, dropping huge updates like patch 1.06 to ignite a massive redemption arc. Now we have a sprawling masterpiece where you can use a jetpack for aerial mobility, grapple onto moving trains, and engage in wild wrestling-style combat that lets you grab enemies to use as meat shields. Powered by the proprietary Black Space engine, it pushes boundaries with ray-traced global illumination and advanced snow physics. PC players get DLSS 4.0 and FSR 4.0, while the PlayStation 5 Pro utilizes PSSR. Base consoles juggle a choppier quality mode or a blurrier performance mode, but this remains an absolute triumph. And that's our list for the 20 best open world games you need to play before 2027. Whether you're looking to get lost in a massive fantasy realm or cause chaos in a sprawling city, these titles are essential gaming experiences. What did we miss? Let us know your own personal favorites in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe for more content. Here are some more videos of ours you can watch. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.